All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we are talking about what happens when you get fired. What's your plan? Why is it my responsibility? Sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at it. So welcome back to week 3 of Practical Preparedness here at Inside My Canoe Head and our parent labs, Preparedness Labs Incorporated. This is part of a 10-week plan of delivering practical preparedness tips to you and everybody else out there to talk about the actual things we can do. Season 6, 7, 8 here at Inside My Canoe Head, we're all about the theoretical foundations, responsibility, etc., about how to build strategic plans, life plans, what your 2024 should look like, and all of that. This first part of 2024, we're delivering 10 weeks worth of practical tips. So sit down with us, hang in there. We've got some great ideas. And today we are talking about, which is probably the most underrated and the least examined preparedness idea, which is finance. Here at Preparedness Labs Incorporated, we've developed an education strategy that works around a trifecta of preparedness plans. The first 2 weeks were about the first two that you should have. One is the most likely, which is an extended power outage. The second, which is the most dangerous, which is an evacuation. And the third one is the most underrated, but I would argue just as impactful, which is what happens when you get fired. And let's roll this back. It is your responsibility to be able to financially take care of yourself. We can move this back to a program, an episode that I did in season 8, which talks about the 3 rules of life, right? Everybody asks that question, why are we here? The existential, spiritual ask, why am I here and what am I supposed to achieve? Well, the totality of philosophy aggregates to 3 very simple rules. Number 1 is don't be a burden, which means, translated, it's your responsibility to pay your own freaking bills, right? No matter what happens to you in your life, ups and downs, lefts and rights, goods or bads or indifferent, it's your responsibility to pay your own way through this life. The second one is be a good person. And it simply means follow the rules of your society. Heck, if you don't like them, advocate, be a politician, be argumentative, get them changed. But until they get changed, just follow the rules and be a good person. And the last one is to leave it better than you found it. And it's simply not only a Boy Scout principle, but it's all about making the world better for the generations that come after you. Doing something important. Some people refer to it as leaving a legacy. I refer to it as doing something important that you make a difference where you're making the next generation's life a simple bit easier or a little bit more efficient, however you look at it. So if you look at that, your 3 rules of life are really simple, right? But if we think about financial preparedness, it's often overlooked, but I'm here to argue with you it is just as impactful as having a catastrophic loss, as losing a house to a fire, losing a house to your flood, or some other catastrophic thing. If you think about it, if you live in a family where you have one primary income or only a sole income that's there to cover all of your family costs and everything that you do, you may believe that you are in an exceptionally secure job, etc. But what happens when you get fired? What happens when you show up for work tomorrow, right? Ready to rock that presentation, talk to Jim about his kid's concert that was the night before, say hi to Mohammed after he just got back from vacation, whatever it is. And you're met by HR at the bottom of the skyscraper. It's happened to members of my family before, and you're pulled into a side room and a member of HR and the security team is there. They already have cleared out your desk. All of your passwords and everything have been swiped, and they're here to talk to you about your severance package or your dismissal reasons. Done. You're finished. That's not what was on your mind as you were going to work. So when you walk out of there with your head spinning, or we see it all over Instagram and TikTok, you get this email message saying our company is reducing 6.8% of our staff. If you're one of these staff, you will get an email within the next 15 minutes outlining your first meeting to talk, or your next meeting, or the meeting to talk about your termination, right? If you don't get an email in 15 minutes, you're fine, we're keeping you, etc. Is essentially what it means. And you see these people being totally ass surprised. They're doing really great work. And if you think about the environment we're in, think about the current inflation. We have a constrained labor force, but at the same time, we're facing rising unemployment as recessionary pressures start to hit major industries and they make cutbacks. You have to remember that labor in almost every industry that exists is the most expensive line item, which means the default position for every company that is having cost overruns, that needs to reduce cost, has to go to labor. They really have no other choice. You can trim fat and administrative thing. We hear this in politics all the time. But in the end, if you need to make savings, you have to cut labor costs. And so you're the labor, right? Remember, you're the labor the company needs to cut. So in that mind, think about it. It's about having a plan, a strategy for when it happens. Nobody wants this to occur. Nobody wants to, well, you might want to get the guy in the cubicle next to you fired for his daily antics. I get it. But nobody personally wants to get their arse handed to them at work and get fired, right? Nobody's looking forward to that. Nobody really thinks about it because you don't think it'll happen to you. But remember this, everybody leaves their job. You're either going to die, which has other consequences. You're going to quit because something happens. You're going to retire, or you're going to get fired. You will at some point leave the job you're in. So I'm talking to you today about that strategy. What is your strategy for when you leave, right? You may have a plan that I'm finishing this career. I'm going to do 3 more years and I'm going to move on, right? That's a strategy plan. But what if your job ends today? Not the 3 years you had planned, but what if it ends today? It's a strategy. It costs no money, but it takes an investment of time and effort. And if you want a primary example of it, we only need to roll back to 2020. Remember that little pandemic thingy? Our friend that came over and visited from China, great people doing great work for great healthy companies were fired on the spot. Full stop. These were just fantastic human beings who were doing great work, were valued in their community, were adding value to their company, and they're done. They're done because existential crisis. They're done because an exogenous shock beyond their control. These people did nothing wrong, right? Getting fired is not necessarily about you doing something wrong. You may have, and you may actually deserve it. But in the vast majority of cases, you're just part of a cutback, restructuring, reorganization. Call it what you will. You essentially did nothing wrong, but you are now part of the calamitous fallout of some decision, right? So the pandemic should be more than enough recent reminder that there's no guaranteed job. And listen, you could have one of these, in Canada, we call them the cash for life jobs. When you get the full-time indeterminate wage from the federal government and you think, I can't ever get fired. I'm never getting fired. Nobody's laying me off. I've got cash for life. It's like a freaking lottery system. What happens if you're downsized tomorrow? You work for a crown corporation, a new government comes in and decides that crown corporation is no longer required to serve Canadians, and we're shutting it down. Oops, you're done. Doesn't matter if you got an indeterminate job, you're done. What's your plan? So enough of batting that around. We base this on the principle of uncertainty, right? Financial markets hate uncertainty, as do most individuals. If you think about your personal risk profile, your attitude, your self-confidence, your own comfort with the unknown, everybody has a different target along a spectrum, let's call it that, right? Everybody has a different comfort level with the unknown. I've met a couple of people, especially in my Army career, that really couldn't give a you-know-what about what's happening tomorrow morning. They don't care. They don't care about uncertainty. They just roll with the punches and they'll figure out life when it happens to them. But the vast majority of us have some very specific concerns about significant issues, and we really want to know that our mortgage or our rent is going to get paid, that we can pay our car note, that our car's not going to get repossessed, and that, I'd really like to stay in line with my payments, whatever they may be. The plan is founded on a pivot, right? It's founded on a pivot. And that means, to what role, industry will you pivot when this one ends? Job, position, function in society. That's your primary idea. You have to figure out, when you are an account executive at a cellular company and you're managing a series of corporate accounts and you become redundant and you're laid off, what are you doing tomorrow? To what role, industry, job will you head to? How long will it take you to be up and running and earning income in that new field? So if you decide, I'm going to switch from an account executive, what I do now is that I'm going to be a copywriter, right? I want to go an online copywriting business. I'm really good at writing. It's something that I enjoy. I'm going to be a copywriter. So I'm going to ask you that question. How long is it going to take you to be up and running in your new job, right? You figured out first what your next job is. Now you figure out how long it's going to be up and running. The next is, what training is required? Can you get that on your own time? Can you figure out how to earn certain qualifications, certifications, whatever they may be, or just experience in this next position? Or are you going to have to do that on a full-time basis in this period between when you get fired and you kick off, right? You're looking for a time period. So for example, I'm sitting here. I was a member of the Canadian Armed Forces. I retired. I now wanted to switch over to be a part-time professor and entrepreneur. That needed about 3 years of hard work after my retirement date, before I was up and the required education of the PhD and et cetera, other things were completed, so that I could assume the role as an adjunct professor, right? So I needed 3 years to get this up and running. I can entrepreneurial on the side and try to earn a little bit of money, but I knew my time frame, right? So understanding the time frame is clear, because my experience has told me that guess is not always going to be right? I might think it's 4 months. I might think if I'm switching from an account executive to become a carpenter or a framer, it's going to take me, 4 months. But what if it takes longer? So how do I understand that level of effort required, the level of finances, etc.? So it's something from my training in logistics. In supply chain management, we have something called a safety stock. And a safety stock is a measure of your comfort and your confidence in the agility of your supply chain to adapt to shocks. So we've seen a lot of supply chain shocks. So your safety stock is the amount that you keep in excess of current throughput demand, right? So think about, I'm going to take 4 months to be an account executive to a framer. I have a safety stock for myself that's 1.5. It's a general rule in supply chain management. Some be shorter, some be longer, but the simplistic is 1.5. So if I think it's going to take me 4 months to make that change, I'm going to build a safety stock that requires 6 months, 1.5 times, right? Very simple. So 6 months, what does that tell me? That's your emergency savings fund, right? Everybody says have 2 to 3 months of emergency savings. Some say 6 months of emergency savings. There's a whole slew of advice in this world. I'm here to tell you, I have no idea what size of emergency fund you should have. I'm telling you this strategic plan of thinking about when this current income flow ends, where you're going to go to get the next income flow, how long it's going to take you to be up and running and earning an income flow. Put a safety stock on that. That informs an intelligent answer to the question, how big should my emergency fund be? Me throwing a dart at the wall and hoping to hit months that are magically correct is ridiculous. People out there have all kinds, no, you figure out a strategy for what you want to do. Your strategy informs your emergency fund, right? It's really that simple. If you try to take somebody's PDF downloadable list and fill it out, you're going to be screwed. It's not going to work for you. It doesn't work that way. Other people would like to sell you stuff to tell you it is, but it doesn't. So once you figure out that you need, in this scenario that we're using, going from an account executive at a cellular company to become a framer, I don't really need any training. I'm going to practice building crap in my basement or whatever it may be, or work with a buddy on the weekends just to get my skill set up. help people out here and there so that I understand it. I'm good at it. I have some basic tools, acquire them over time if I don't have a bit of money, the proper belt, good tools, that kind of thing. I'm ready to go as a framer. And I might even start it up as a bit of a side hustle for fun on the weekends to help people out. But the end result is I know where I'm going. It's going to take about 4 months to be up and running, set up the company and start earning money. And so therefore, I have a 6 month savings, right? So now I have no idea how much money that is. You do. If you look and classify every expenditure that you make in life as a necessity and luxury. And a necessity is your animalistic requirements of food, water, shelter, health, safety, and security, and things that you have a legal obligation to pay, i.e. you've signed up for an $800 a month car loan, you dumb nut, but you did it anyhow. So you've got to pay that. So you have your luxuries and necessities. Your luxuries can go away. Your necessities need to be paid. You take that, you multiply it by what I just figured out was 6 months. That gives you a figure. Now you got to sit down and figure out a plan as to how you're going to build that. Now I'm just sitting here spewing out, become a framer. And you're like, how do I figure that out, dude? Like, how do I figure out what to turn to? I'll give you a couple of hints. First, what are you good at? I know, for example, an old friend of mine was an engineer in the military, very talented engineer, but he was a brutally incredible, capable home reno guy, right? He was just one of these guys. He had no formal training, no trade certification, but he could reno a basement, no problem, all on his own, have it to top quality tradesperson standard, right? Didn't have any professional certifications, couldn't sign off on any jobs, anything like that, but he had this incredible skill set. He was just naturally good at it, and he freaking enjoyed it, right? So there's something that you could do, something that you are good at on the side. Second, you got to think about what is in demand of times of economic downturns, right? People usually go down market, right? So if you have a niche skill set that is high cost, low volume, it's probably not going to work well in an economic downturn. So if you take the generalistic viewpoint that you getting fired may be part of a bigger economic cycle and society surrounding you may be entering some type of economic downturn, you have to look to the industries that are most useful and actually expand in times of economic downturns. And there's a number of them out there from construction, believe it or not. You've got places like Walmart and working in industries such as that. Down market industries do very, very well. Third is, what are you passionate about? And this is something that you hear over the internet on motivational talks all the time and little clips on YouTube and TikTok. And it basically says, what would you do for free if you could? What would you love to, and I use this phrase all the time, swinging your legs out of bed in the morning. You can't wait to get after it. You can't wait for the opportunity to do this. Imagine if you got paid to do that. Think about that. How can you make it work? Again, these plans don't cost any money. These plans are all about you sitting down and thinking through to find that niche that you want to work in, research how to get there, and develop a plan. The whole time you're making a great income at your current job. You're still rocking an incredible life, but you're investing a small amount of time off here on the side to make sure that you're ready when you get fired. And some basic financial hints for you that are really, really important, and I think ground our discussion here today. First is, you always have to run out a month before you run out of money. It's a basic Malthusian truth, right? You just have to. And the only quick way to do that is to cut. You have to continue to cut expenses until your expenses are lower than your income. Full stop, right? My first accommodation were 4 guys living in a bachelor apartment. Think about that. Y'all out there think y'all deserve your own apartment. Y'all think I can't afford a 1-bedroom apartment. I said, well, there's 4 of you living in it. Why can't you? Oh, there's not 4? Oh, you think, I could go on in a bit of a soapbox rant. But the point being is, whatever income you have in the job that you have chosen to do in the city that you have chosen to live at, that's your current income level. Before you make any changes, you must spend less than that. Now, arguably, you should always live on less than 80% of your income, right? You don't want to live within your means. You want to live below your means. That gives you room for emergencies, exogenous shocks, and things are beyond your control that are not going to cause considerable dislodging of your financial plan and your financial portfolio. And one idea that is great out there, and I get yelled at all the time for this, which is why I'm saying it, because I love stirring the pot. 2-income families. If you make the decision that both parents or both members of the household, adult members of the household, are going to earn an income, you should learn to live off the largest income as the sole income, aka 80% or less of that income, and you should invest the other. Friends of mine did this years and years ago, and this was in the 1990s, started in the 1990s. Both of them were in the military. So they earned reasonable but not amazing salaries, average Canadian salaries. In today's term, it would be $50,000, $60,000 a year. So together, they make a family income of $120,000. But they lived off one. They chose the one income that was the largest, and so they built a family household, expenses, housing costs, car costs, all that, as if the second income never invested. So if you think about it, $60,000 after government deductions, let's call it $45,000. They invested $45,000 a year in the equivalent of an ETF index fund. They did that for 24 years. At the end of 24 years, they were literally sitting on something the akin to $2.5 to $3 million, including one recession that in the middle that took a gut punch to the stock market. And simply because they earned 2 incomes, they both wanted to work. They were both passionate about what they did, but they lived off of one income. And now imagine if you have something as simple as you had a primary income of, say, $70,000, and you had the other spouse worked and made about $30,000, right? So you created a life that only required the $70,000, and the $30,000 turned into $22,000 after deductions. So every year you invested $22,000 in a basic stock market ETF, and you did that, and you just had yourself a great life. Your retirement is going to be in the freaking Turks and Caicos with a waiter serving you, right? Awesome, incredible strategy. I can't say enough about it. I don't do that. I live large. I have a different strategy, but guess what? Other people do, and it's incredibly exciting when you sit down and you talk to them about the level of financial independence. So they're working, they're loving their lives, but they know if they get fired tomorrow, they're done. They're done. If they get fired, they're just done. They'll go off and do something else. So the idea here is that you are responsible for your financial emergencies. So adopt yourself a prepared life. The idea of having a financial plan as part of your trifecta of preparedness plans is because preparedness plans are about exogenous shock. They're about things happening to you that are beyond your control, and they're not your fault. Right? This is the idea that the world can impact you. You have a very small circle of things that you can control, and you have a very large area of things that can affect how you intend to operate and run your life that are beyond your control. All that you can do is choose to how you're going to respond when the world gut punches you, right? When they hit you upside the head with a baseball bat without knowing it's coming, whatever theory and idea you want to use, the point is no different, right? You are responsible for your outcomes. It's your responsibility to pay your bills when the shizzy hits the fizzy and when you get fired. So set yourself up for success. Is it going to be quick? Nope. Nobody said it would be quick. Adopting a prepared life is not about going down to the store and dropping $1,000 on kit and throwing it in your basement. That's perceived preparedness. That's not actual preparedness. So if we think about when we wrap it up, all the lessons from today are simple. Number one, you have a job, you're earning an income. That's awesome. It could stop tomorrow. You just accept the idea that could happen, and you accept the responsibility that you are responsible for having a plan when that happens. Then you figure out what would I like to do? What can I do? What's a great idea? What's easy, simple, and low cost to pivot to, and I can be up and running and earning a new income, etc. There were a few cases out of the pandemic when people got fired from their jobs and millions got fired from their jobs because of the pandemic, the vast majority sat around and hoped, with no strategy whatsoever, that somehow magically the clock would come around and return their job to normalcy. Somebody will figure this out. Somebody will get me my old job back and everything will return to normal. That was the majority of strategy. Well, there were some people who were up and running and pivoting in a very short period of time, started their dream idea, started their entrepreneurial idea, jumped into their dream career, did awesome things, and are now doing incredibly financially, or at least they're sustaining themselves in their new job. They're joyful. They're happy because they have a strategy. Think about this. When the next pandemic or huge shock hits our society and a bunch of millions of people are fired, are you going to sit around with your thumb in your mouth waiting, hoping that you'll just get your job back? Listen, you might say to yourself, I'm an 18-year federal employee, indeterminate. They're just going to pay me forever. Well, that happened last time. I guarantee you that's not going to happen next time. The Canadian population will not tolerate the fact that the federal public service is getting paid and they're not, right? So if your strategy is that it's somebody else's responsibility to pay my bills and to put money in my bank account when I can't, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting your family up for calamities, and you're avoiding responsibility for your outcomes, which is an egregious decision in our minds. So thanks for joining us this week on 10 weeks of practical preparedness. This week is about financial preparedness, having that plan when you're fired. It is your responsibility. We've got lots coming out this week. We've got blogs, we've got long form videos, we've got another podcast near the tail end of the week. Everything that we can put out there to help you figure out what you're going to do when you get fired. Have that plan. So when you get fired, you're pivoting, you're executing a well-rehearsed, well-understood plan, and everybody else around you is circling and wondering what just happened to them, and you're off and running. That is preparedness. So thanks again for joining us this week at Inside My Canoe Head. Please drop all of your comments. Drop over to our website, www.insidemycanoehead.ca. There's a comment button. You can get down below. Drop me an email at jeff@preparednesslabs.ca. And if you really enjoy the content here and you think we're doing great stuff, you are free to buy me a coffee. There's a link there to quickly get a couple of clicks, and Stripe will upload the cost of a coffee of $5 Canadian, a lot less American, and you can support this podcast. Other than that, we will continue to bring the 10 weeks of practical preparedness to you free of charge, because in the end, we're here to make a better community, to build a more resilient society, and to help you navigate this incredibly crazy and chaotic decade of the 2020s. So thanks again. Take care and stay safe.